All right, Rich. Marie Kondo. You know that name?
Yeah. Or like the organizational expert?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So something on one of our prior discussions, you were talking about a feature in the product, and maybe we should eliminate it. Maybe we should make it harder to find or whatever. I talk a lot about the Marie Kondo method for this, which is if you are trying to declutter, you're trying to maybe at the extreme case somebody's a hoarder or something's just grown out of control and it's creating negative value in their life. It's not sparking joy anymore. It's not driving value. It's potentially harmful. Put it in a tote or a box. Put today's date on it, and if you haven't opened that box in 6 months or 3 months, or the date can be up to you, but it should be short enough that you're not hoarding boxes of stuff. Let go of it. Now, applying that to a digital product or a modern product, I think is almost even easier than a Rubbermaid tote full of like grandma's china.
The part that comes up to me that I think is interesting there is like with a digital product, I love the concept. And I'm thinking like, what is the box? And the first thing that the box went to in my mind was put a timer on it. Like put a calendar thing 3 months in the future for whatever this concept is and just let it be. Because I know how I would handle it. I would look at that thing and be like, oh, I hadn't thought about that at all over the last 3 months. This is my opportunity to get rid of it. The only worry that also comes up for me is when the timer goes off, somebody says like, oh, I got to go do something with this now because the timer expired.
Right.
Right. Like
Yeah.
I found the box. I got to go do something with it. And my thought there is that's actually what you're talking about too. If you took the thing that was physical, you put it in a box, you put it away. If it didn't look in that box for 6 months, you should throw the box away. Well, you have to do something with the box. You got to pick it up and at least look at what's in there, or just like look at the date on it and say, oh, this is too old. I don't even know what's in there. Toss. Right. So there is still some action that gets you involved. And if opening that box says, hey, actually, maybe there's something here, we should come back to it. That's cool. But then do you need like a punch card? Right? Like, let's go back to like, the sandwich shop and like, I got a little punch card for how many times it came in. How many times am I going to open the box after 3 or 6 months and put it back on the shelf and not do anything with it before I really got to get rid of this thing?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure there's low tech and high tech ways to do this, but the goal is if you open the box at all, not just to look, not because you're curious, but because you actually need the thing, then that may be a signal that it either has utility for you or it's got some sort of value. And something I have written down on one of my post-its here is functional value versus emotional value. And there's many other different types of value, but those are just two big ones. And I got rid of a lot of stuff in my personal life about 5 years ago, but I held on to some things. Like I felt good about letting go of some sentimental things, but I didn't let go of everything because it has emotional value and I just wasn't ready or didn't want to or whatever. And I use an example with clients, like painting the walls of this room. No functional value. They're still walls. They're still going to hold up the second floor. They're still going to provide privacy. They're still going to do that. But it does have value to me to have them a certain color and to have things on them and all that. And so that is real value, but I probably shouldn't put as much value on it as if they were falling down and not serving the function or the utility that they're there for.
You mentioned digital products a minute ago, and I want a tie that comes back to me. Actually, probably for all products that people are working on. Digital ones are just maybe the more common avenue for a lot of our listeners. As soon as you start mentioning functional value and emotional value, like why do we keep something around or why do we do something? It got me thinking about another thing I say a lot, which is destroy the things on your product backlog you haven't touched in a while. Like dance away, man. Every item that you put into the product backlog is one of those boxes, right? And we probably put that box on that shelf there with emotional value. My guess is that so many more people have tied an emotional value to why we need to do this thing for themselves and not so much for their clients and their customers. And it's because somebody important said that this was, good. I had an idea and I think it's amazing. And it's rare that it's functional value. Like, this is actually good for our customers. It's good for our business. It, lowers something down. Those are cool ideas that we maybe want to keep. Or maybe, it is emotional value for somebody else, but we keep them around in the product backlog way too long solely because of the emotional connection. I think this thing's important. I think we need it. I'm worried about disappointing whoever asked me to go and do this in the first place, right? And what I love about a tool like that, and thinking about this whole concept, this with Marie Kondo's, sense like that, is I would probably program something to automatically delete items that have not had a modified date in like the last 6 months, right? So that no one knew it was there. And if they did, why weren't we doing something with it? So just automate that away. Get rid of that. Get rid of that baggage that you're carrying around and clean up your product house.
Well, something we've said on this podcast before, Sunder and I, was we'd ask the audience, what's the oldest thing in your backlog? And I asked him, what's the oldest thing you've ever seen? He asked me and all this. And everybody's got stories, right? And about 5 years ago, a therapist asked me when I was talking about grief and losing one of the people in my family, they're like, do you think that throwing that thing away is going to change your memory of your grandfather? I'm like, no. Like, so why are you holding on to it? I'm like, well, because it's a reminder. It's honoring. It's sentimentality. He goes, what if I told you you could let go of that thing, take that box out of your closet, and you'd feel exactly the same? And that helped a lot. And I started to do it and let go. And there are still times where I am like, oh, I did let go of that thing. I gave it away, or I gave it to another family member. I took it to Goodwill. And it bothers me. But I would say mostly it's a positive outcome for me. Another story that Marie Kondo tells in her book that I really related to with exactly what you're talking about, which is these big giant backlogs and the emotional reason that people do, is she tells this story in there of a previous client who graduated from her method and came back and said, I am really stressed. I'm anxious. I don't know what's going on. I'm doing everything you told me to do. Can you come over? So she went over, because a lot of the work she does is in the home. She goes to this home, and this person had an immaculate home, and on the surface it looked good. And then she took her into her master closet and opens the doors, and there's all these containers of everything, and they're neatly arranged. They're labeled. They're color coded. But it was just organized clutter. And what Marie says she realized at the time in this moment was the weight of all those things. It was like they were all yelling at this person every day, to the point where she didn't even want to go in the room. She didn't want to open the door. She didn't want to look at him. Just looking at it made her anxious because of the sheer amount of words and volume and colors and labels. And I think that's how a lot of backlogs are that I see.
It almost feels like there's no cost to keep it. It's on a server somewhere, right?
Just zeros and ones.
It's just digital. Who cares, right?
Yeah.
I can label it, and I can create a custom filter for it. And I can link it to these other things, and we can make lots of ways to get back to it really quickly. And it stares you in the face, and you see the weight of 812 items, and you go, "Oh, what are we doing?"
Rich, I am going to connect something you talked to me about on a previous episode of making something public, right? I'm going to tell you and the listeners, I have, as of today, 22,000 pictures on my phone. Exactly. Which is shocking, to be honest. Like, I knew it was a lot. I knew I had crossed to 20,000. The reason I'm mentioning this is I'm going to eat my own dog food here, everybody. And over the holiday break, I've already made a resolution. Sorry, Rich, bad word. That I'm going to clean up my digital clutter a bit. And not just on my phone, but on my computer as well. And that means I'm going to say goodbye to some of those funny memes that I've been carrying around since the late 90s or early 2000s on literal CDs that I burned. in 2002 and the 22,000 pictures on my phone and all that stuff. It's a big problem because it is the carrying cost is, we perceive it to be very low with ones and zeros and digital things. And I still think there is a lot of value in tidying up. One thing I miss about the old days, and I'm curious if you have a similar experience in the old days, I mean like 2019, of going into businesses, sitting down with teams in their physical workspace and sitting in team rooms and looking at whiteboards and walls. I'll never forget, inside of a big bank here in the US, I walked in this room and I was getting a tour. It was my first couple days helping out this new organization, and a product owner brought me up to this wall and I go, what the hell am I looking at? They're like, this is my backlog. And I'm like, oh, let's get a coffee and a chair because I need to understand what I'm looking at. I mean, I'm not exaggerating, Rich, looking at a 8 or 9 feet tall wall that is probably 25, 30 feet long and covered with painter's tape and Post-it notes and all this. And on the left, I saw the word kindergarten. And on the right, I saw the words PhD. You hooked me. I'm already in. I got into work because I was not in a university. And the way that this product person organized their brain and got everything out of their brain onto something tangible and created multiple levels of backlog was things started at the left. If they were just a crazy harebrained idea on a single Post-it note, scroll down in a meeting, and on the right was stuff that was out the door already. And then a couple steps to the left of that was stuff that was currently being built. Have you seen anything like that before?
At least twice at the same company.
Interesting. So was it just coincidence, or was it like a norm that they did that?
One was a mess. The other was wonderful. Okay, so the one that was a mess was a very similar situation. 8-foot high wall, 20, 30 feet long, like this big conference room. Client had just started doing SAFe, maybe had something to do with it. They mapped out all this stuff, man.
You made it so far today without mentioning SAFe. Okay.
Sorry.
It's all good.
It's just for context, right? Because I came in around the same time. So it's hard for me to know why, but they kept referring to terms and techniques. And so that's how they framed this wall. And it's just like sticky notes everywhere, categories that I guess made some sense to them, right? It's, we hear the joke of the TLAs of business, right? Everyone wants a 3-letter acronym for something. They had 4 and 5-letter acronyms. They were definitely acronyms because they did not make up words. And I'm just like, there's at least 20 of these things up, right? It goes on. And there's like long, like 15-foot long pieces of string connecting items. And I just looked at it like, what are we doing here? Like how far out does this plan go? Oh, like 2-3 years. When will you know that it works? What?
How could we ever that?
Yeah. So that was wild, right? To see something like that, I was like, oh, what a mess. And like I said, same company, different group, took me to another building they owned that was empty. And what I thought was cool is like they were redoing some of the office space. It used to be, I think, a law firm. So there's just a lot of like interesting rooms and wood paneling and whatever all over the place. And we're walking around and they take me up to this one floor. The floor is empty. They're like, yeah, we've been squatting in here and kind of working out about like this big problem. Okay. And they show me this case that they're working on, like all this workflow and all these different actions that have to happen and where things go. And I'm like, okay. And there's just like thousands of sticky notes up on the wall. And they go like around corners down these hallways. I'm just like, whoa, this thing is huge. And I'm just there walking through. I'm taking this thing all in. It's all very neatly organized too. Like there's very clean columns of various sizes. I'm like, okay, wow, like put a lot of effort into this. What does this all mean? And I also noticed as I'm walking around there's a couple sticky notes that have different colors. There's one predominant color. I think it was pink. I think it was this guy. But there were some blues and some greens and some yellows. And I'm like, okay, well, what are the other colors, right? Like, because like they just seem to be sparsed in there. Like, oh, those are the ones we rewrote. Like, what do you mean rewrote? Like, well, we started by identifying all the things that related to this whole workflow and this whole transformation of this piece that we're doing on these sticky notes. And then we started thinking, like, what are the things that are actually critical to it? And we changed the color of those notes and reposted them on the wall. So the 90-ish% of sticky notes that are still pink are all things that we're trying to figure out how to get rid of. And I thought that was really cool, right? So it was a map of removal to clean something up and make it a little bit better. And that was, it just blew my mind to see this huge plan and, or at least workflow that was out there. And, their backlog was much smaller. Like they were like, we're not just targeting all this. So they were looking at certain sections, trying to figure out how to get rid of certain little pieces. So that was I think the one time I saw this huge wall. And I'm like, this is actually really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that I liked about the really big wall that I'm mentioning is it didn't have hundreds and thousands of Post-it notes on it. It was physical, tangible scratch space for the entire team and the stakeholders in the area to interact with. But it did not have 500 or 1,000 items on it. And I think that there's, just like the woman in the Marie Kondo story, there's this belief that it, like, well-organized chaos will be healthy and it won't be a weight on you and it'll be useful. And I think that I'm helping a couple teams right now understand that that's not the case, and that the Marie Kondo method, the KonMari method, it first talks about getting things like with like, and that's what I do. I'm really good at that. It's actually one of the things that I take pride in, is helping people find all the hidden work, bring work together, find patterns, and put like with like and things together towards goals or features or whatever it is why we're doing something. Then to step back and look at, like, does this add value? What will be different and for whom if we do this thing? And then to start to use that to identify which things we want to give to the proverbial goodwill or get rid of. And there's many techniques out there about that. But I think the soundbite for this is well-organized chaos or well-organized clutter is still clutter. And do not minimize the emotional weight that can have on you. A technique that I think my old colleague, Erin Perry, shout out to Erin, I think she's at Wells Fargo right now, created, and we extended it and riffed on it, was we called it the backlog snake, because we had this big conference room in our area that was in a U configuration. And anybody who's been in corporate America knows what I'm talking about, right? Like all the desks are in like a horseshoe shape. And we printed out the backlog from Jira, where everything had its own card. And we used a big paper chopper to chop them into cards. And then we made a couple teams. We didn't make them. We facilitated a few teams putting their one end of the horseshoe was the head of the snake and the other end was the tail. We said, you need to put this in order. And we had it took hours, but in the end, they had kind of ordered hundreds of things. And then we started to see stuff on the floor. Like, what's this stuff? Oh, that's stuff that we agree we don't need to do at all. I'm like, nice. They already made that connection. So then we started like trimming the tail of the snake, and it was good. And there's a lot of other techniques out there like that to go from something big and unwieldy and organize it first and then make it smaller. I think that's the right order, by the way.
When you said snake, my, vintage video game brain went to snake.
Yeah.
And I think tying it back to your backlog story, so many companies do it the wrong way, right? They're like, ooh, something else to go consume. Snake got longer. Ooh, something else that's out there. Well, let's go grab that. Got longer.
Yep.
And what happens in that game?
You die when the snake hits itself.
Yeah. So stop playing that game. Start playing Jim's game. You're going to be a much better place.
Love it.
Jim, my last soundbite here, I think, for this one. tying back to two things you just mentioned, was something earlier, the concept of what you hang on to, right? Like if you were to get rid of that thing, would it have you forget about your grandfather? No, right? And I do a similar thing, right? I've had a lot of stuff from family members that have passed away, from the people that I've been with, and I'm just like, why do I have this? I have a set of bowls from my grandfather because he used to make me a great soup, and I love it. And there are many memories I have of him, but every time I use one, I think of him, and that's what I need. And I have 2 Christmas ornaments that are like some of the very few things I have that connect me to a person. One is from my grandmother. And it's a lobster in a cage, and she loved lots of nautical things. But it's like just having that ornament is like a wall of memories that comes back, right? And I only have one other thing, that I really cherish from her, that I can see it more times than just the holidays. But also, I got from Thomas Schisler, fellow PST. He did a laser cut felt angel ornament.
Okay.
For me and for the PSTs when we were at an event one time. And I'm like, this is so thoughtful and cool. And I know he likes to experiment and craft and do all kinds of neat stuff like that. And so I have it. And every year I put it up, and every year I think about Thomas. And I texted him the picture, and I just said, Thomas, I just put this back on my tree. I just want to say I'm thinking about you, man. And I love having this ornament because of that reason.
Right.
And he's shocked that I still have it, but I'm like, I don't need a lot. It's just that makes that connection. And if I go back to what you were just talking about with goals, so many people have backlogs. It's this large, organized clutter, or maybe disorganized clutter of stuff. They don't have the anchor, right? What's the goal that reminds you of why we're doing all this stuff in the first place? What's the vision for this product? What's the aim and the ambition that we're going for that can allow us to just take all of this clutter and get rid of it, because we'll still anchor ourselves in one way to what we're going after. And that's the thing that we should hang on to.
Yeah. And I love that story because I'm not suggesting we let go of things that bring us joy or create, a bond or a connection. It's just to evaluate why you're holding on to it. Your story is a great example of whether it's the bowl, and I have some of my grandfather's tools. I keep thinking, and every time I do that, I think I'm like, he used this in like the 50s to build the home that my grandmother still lives in. Like, I feel great about that. I feel pride. And it's when we're holding on to something for the wrong reason, because we think we should, or like, what if I forget about it? Or somebody one time asked me for that and I need to be able to go put my fingers on that right away. Those are usually not the right reasons. And, in the Christmas season, one of the reasons I like handmade gifts, especially when I make gifts for people, is it is impossible to make something for someone and not think of them. Like, even if Thomas was making 10 of those for 10 of you, it's impossible to think that he would make those 10 and not at least to some extent think, oh, I'm going to give this one to Rich, or Rich is going to get one of these. And like, you can't replace that with any store-bought anything, in my opinion.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rich Visotsky. Join Jim Sammons and I for our 12 days of holiday-themed conversations. Subscribe now and tune back in for tomorrow's episode.